Ready to rumble.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Hi, I'm Slice.
And I'm Emily.
And welcome to another episode of Home Records, the podcast where we, two married musicians, pick an album from our 2,000-piece vinyl collection and discuss its personal and cultural importance. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm really good. It is a Sunday morning.
Indeed, once again.
And Hubs and I are here to talk about a record.
Yep.
The only negative about the day is we have run out of coffee. We have no coffee in our house, so I cannot promise what this podcast will be like. I am unhinged.
Well, I've been on a coffee strike for a couple of months, mostly for health reasons, but
A coffee strike.
Yep, I know
I am not participating. We're a divided household.
Yeah, some of my friends are going to be very disappointed to hear that.
You've been on a mushroom coffee kick, although you haven't even done that recently.
Exactly. I've just been on a general coffee strike. It's really not that serious, folks.
It's not that serious, although we will be getting more today.
Yes, we will. Anyway, so I'm very excited to be talking about this record.
Yeah. Although, before we get into this record today, also want to shout out, we've been doing this for a minute now, getting used to releasing and recording a podcast. And just this past week, we've had a few people reach out and say how much they're enjoying it, including some record stores we love. And so just wanted to shout out, thank you guys so much for being here and for listening and being part of this journey as we figure out this new venture.
Yeah, thank you so much for the support, and thanks for listening in and indulging us.
Yeah, indulging us. You are the record man. I'm just here as the record man's wife. All right, record for today.
Yes, so today we're talking about Elton John's Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy from 1970.
I think 75.
Yep, 1975 precisely. Oh, yeah. I have here in my hand the 50th anniversary vinyl reissue.
That's an incredible piece of art.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What is this?
And it has an insert in here. It has all this artwork and these drawings and these notes about the lyrics and making the record, things like that. Some really neat stuff. They really did a great job with this reissue packaging.
If you're watching this on YouTube, you can actually see the record. We're trying to show it off. Wow, this is incredible.
Yeah. So this is my favorite Elton John album, or at the very least, I feel like this is his best album.
Isn't this everybody's favorite Elton John album?
No.
Okay. What are the other contenders? Because this is the one I think of when I think of Elton John.
Goodbye Yellow Brick Road.
Oh, duh. I walked right into that. I knew that. I knew the answer to that.
Yeah,
I said no coffee, people. No coffee.
Yeah, the thing is, at least as far as other fans that I've talked about, most people will cite their favorite Elton John records as either Goodbye Yellow Brick Road or Madman Across the Water. My favorite growing up was actually Tumbleweed Connection. That's probably the album I've listened to the most. And that's an interesting record because there were no singles from that album. There were no hits, but it's regarded as his best. Which actually, Captain Fantastic is kind of similar in that way, which we'll get into. But one fun fact about this record is that it was the first album ever in America to debut at number 1.
Seriously?
Yep.
Like, of all time?
Oh, it was the first album to debut number 1. So,
wow.
So typically when albums, get released and they start to get bought, it usually takes a minute for them to climb up the charts. They'll start at like a lower position. They'll work their way to number 1. But Captain Fantastic was the first album in America to debut at number 1, just right off the bat. So within its first week, it outsold whatever albums came out that same year.
That's incredible. I mean, that says a lot about Elton John and just his legacy.
Well, at that time, Elton John was pretty much unstoppable. This was, I believe, his, like, I think it was his third consecutive number one record. No, fourth consecutive number one record, which I believe started with Don't Shoot Me, I'm Only the Piano Player. So it was that one, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, Caribou, and then it was Captain Fantastic. I think that's the order of his discography. But yeah, just an endless stream of number one albums. And this was in the 70s, and he was pretty much putting out 1 or 2 albums a year, including compilations, and having number one hits almost every year too. So he was just the biggest star on the planet at that time. And I feel with this album, this really was kind of this was pretty much sort of the last hurrah of his peak in the 70s, because after that, things kind of, he was still having hit records, but personally, he was just a mess after this record, due to relationship woes and addictions and things like that. So, because the album that came after this, Rock of the Westies, he always talked about how he had a miserable time making that record. And that record has its moments, and it was still a number one record because he was always going to have a number one record.
Because it's Elton John.
Yeah, because Elton John. So, but I will go into a bit of background. So Elton John, for me, was the very first concert I ever saw. In 2005, it was the Peachtree Road Tour. And I was a massive Elton fan. By that point, I had bought his greatest hits, 1970 to 2002, and I listened to that compilation incessantly, especially the second disc with his hits from the 80s and the 90s and early 2000s, because he was still making albums, he was still making records, and we still having hits, whether they were pop hits or adult contemporary hits, he was still chugging along. And by that point, I had already known all of his singles, Your Song, Tiny Dancer, Philadelphia Freedom, all these kinds of songs. Because I also remember the first time I really experienced Elton John was being up one night and watching PBS with my folks, and they were showing the Elton John concert from in London with the Royal Academy of Music Orchestra and Choir. And that was the first time I heard a lot of those songs, a lot of his hits, and then some. So I saw Elton in 2005, and of course it changed my life, and I've seen him many times since then. And we saw him together in Nashville on his farewell tour at the Nissan. And it was interesting because he had just come out of catching COVID. And so he was just trying to get back because it was the first show in like a week. He was coming out of COVID. And man, he definitely got exhausted a couple times throughout the show because he's just a performer that really gives his all every time he plays and sings, Mm-hmm. And his songs are very timeless, and everybody will know at least one or maybe even 2 Elton John songs. But for me, really the first thing I heard by Elton John was probably the first thing everybody in our generation heard from Elton John, which was...
Your Song.
Nope.
What?
Nope. Before
Rocket
that.
Man?
Nope. It wasn't any of his older hits.
Oh. Well, I don't know what we're talking about.
The Lion King.
Oh. That feels like a trick question, everybody.
I'm saying from our generation.
Yes, I agree with that, but I don't think when people think Elton John songs, they think of The Lion King, even though, yes.
I mean, he was nominated for 3 of his songs were nominated for the Oscar. A lot of competition in that year, but that was the first time. I remember I was on a plane ride to Chicago, the first time I ever flew there to my cousin's graduation, and funnily enough, they used to have the TVs throughout the plane, not behind the seats, but just coming from the ceiling you could watch, and they showed the music video for Can You Feel the Love Tonight. And I remember it was like 9 p.m. and I was like very tired, but I vividly have that core memory and just remember feeling very calm about it. And it was the first time I was ever on a plane too. So I'm like, not that I was scared or whatever, but it's like, yeah, it's the first time. And I'm like, oh, let's be fine.
I just I feel like everybody in their being has core artists, and Elton John is such one for you. And if you listen to Slice's music, it's like a no-brainer. You can hear Elton John's influence really quickly as a pianist, and just like the kind of music you make. I mean, you can just hear him in what you do.
I would say definitely piano playing wise more than anything, because I very much borrow a lot of Elton John-isms, which he also was influenced by other players like Leon Russell and Jerry Lee Lewis, so a lot of that is very much embedded in my DNA. Probably more so than any other piano player that I grew up with, because he was kind of the only one I really listened to, aside from, I guess you could say, like Paul McCartney of the Beatles, and everyone in the Beatles played piano, but just listening to the piano on those Beatles records as well, which Elton John also grew up with, because he was a big fan of the Beatles and was very close friends with John Lennon too.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's sort of my background in history with Elton John. I've listened to pretty much all of his albums, even the weird and bad ones from the 80s. And he's consistently put out really great records. He put out a lot of great underrated albums in the 2000s and in the 2010s that I quite enjoy. But in my adulthood, the album that I always returned to was Captain Fantastic.
Yeah, I think for me, I have a very different story with Elton John. I feel like Elton John has just always been on my peripheral. And what I've always loved about him is the fact that he has influenced so many artists, and he gives back to so many young artists. I don't know how many people realize that, but Elton John is a champion for a lot of people before they really hit the stride in their career. And I've always really loved that about him.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a lot of ways, to me, I'm like, I love Elton because Brandy loves Elton.
Yeah, Brandy Carlisle specifically. And they did an album together that came out a couple years ago.
They did, and I've always loved that. And I can, again, hear so much of him and what she does now, especially this record. Because this is Brandy has gone on record saying this is her favorite album of all time. I remember her talking about that in a roundtable interview along with Jason Isbell, Amanda Shires, John Prine, and Marco Price, the Avengers of Americana, if you will. Seriously. Yeah.
But she has cited this record in particular as her favorite album of all time.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that I feel like I enter the world of Elton John through the impact he's had later in his career, just because I didn't grow up in the 70s. And so I think I actually had not listened to this record all the way through. I'd heard bits and pieces of it. I've tried to listen to it in the past. And so it was nice to kind of revisit it and kind of think about the way I know Elton as a legacy artist in today's culture, and kind of go back in time for a minute and think what this album would have been like when it first hit radio and when it first came out, and what it meant for, at the time, maybe the biggest superstar at the time.
Well, what did you think of the record?
I thought it was really, again, I kind of had to stop myself and just take a minute to be like, if you were hearing this for the first time now, you're not used to Elton John yet, he's creating his career, right? I kind of took myself back to that moment and was like, this to me is unlike anything else of the time.
Well, this was an album that could not have been made at the beginning of his career.
Right, yeah.
And just to give a little bit of background on the album is that, well, even before that, so that everyone's aware, in case they aren't, is that for the last 50 to 60 years, Elton John has always only ever written the music for his songs. Pretty much for the most part. He's always had a lyricist writing with him. And for nearly his entire pop career, that lyricist has been Bertie Taupin. And Bertie Taupin has been just as integral into the success of Elton as much as Elton himself. And their dynamic as collaborators has always been very interesting, because what Bernie will do is he'll write the lyrics first and then give them to Elton, and Elton will write the music to it, maybe edit the lyric a little bit, very occasionally add a line or two, and he'll have the song. They've done that for the last 60 years. They've never been in the same room together to write a song. Usually, Bernie will write it down, give the paper to Elton to look at the lyrics, or in the more modern times, faxing and emailing lyrics and things like that. That's pretty much been the dynamic of their collaboration ever since the beginning. And this album, I would say, is also very much the peak of Bernie Taupin's creative output with Elton. And part of that is because this album is autobiographical, because it is about Elton and Bernie trying to make it as artists. That's the whole concept of the album. Elton is Captain Fantastic, and Bernie is the Brown Dirt Cowboy. So,
I didn't realize that. That's interesting.
Yeah, so the album is basically just about the struggles they went through and the dynamics of their relationship at the time as well. And it's kind of funny to know that, because the lyrics tend to be very esoteric.
Yeah, they do. They definitely do. Yeah, I wouldn't have known that just from listening. I mean, you definitely pick up on the struggles of fame and rising as an artist, and you definitely get that, but I don't think I would have put that together.
And Bernie is very clever about it, where he can write lyrics like that without giving away the metaphor or the literal meaning, rather, in the songs.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the track list, you can really see that progression that Bernie was trying to walk us through lyrically. It's really interesting when you realize that is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Elton has gone on record on saying that is what it is, but it does take a little bit of really digging yourself into the songs to kind of read and understand the metaphors and the imagery of the story that they're trying to paint, that Bernie's trying to paint with the lyrics. And I think I would even start with the first track, which is the title track.
I was going to say, like, what are your top tracks? And I actually think the first track is a highlighted track for sure.
It is for me as well. That was actually one of the first songs that my dad attempted to teach me on guitar.
That's ambitious.
Well, it is kind of funny because, I think it was actually the first time I ever learned how to play a riff on acoustic guitar, because it has that.
Yeah, it's a really nice acoustic song.
Yeah. So
that song, to me, when I heard it at first, I was like, this doesn't sound like an Elton John record, because it was so much more acoustic driven, less piano driven. And then later, as it got on, I was like, oh yeah, this is an Elton John record. But the very first track, I was like, that's just straight rock and roll hillbilly music. Like, that's a little bit more country rock and roll. I could hear where Americana came from in that record.
Well, that traces back to the Tumbleweed Connection album,
right?
Actually,
yeah.
Which, we talk about Brandy. Dave Cobb, who has produced Brandy's record, By the Way I Forgive You, and all the other Americana albums, great Americana albums from the 2010s. I met him one time, and he's like, "Yeah, that's my favorite album of all time."
That makes sense.
Connection.
That makes sense.
I think for him, that's been very much a template for producing a lot of those records, especially Brandy's record, because they have that connection.
Yeah, and I hear, I was listening to it. I was like, this doesn't sound like an Elton John song, but it sounds like a Brandy song. It sounds like an Americana. It sounds like a rock and roll song, which I love.
Yeah, and he's had hints of that, like with Saturday Night It's All Right for Fighting and The Bitch Is Back.
Yeah.
Those kinds of songs. But it's funny because Bernie is also he is obsessed with American history, especially Civil War history. And he has written songs with those kinds of themes on certain Elton records, not necessarily this one, but he has had a fascination with the Old West and Westerners, Western films and things like that. And there's been other songs that have touched on those themes, like a song called Roy Rogers from Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, very much is that. And Elton also grew up with a lot of that too. But Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy was sort of the album that kind of, it was the song that solidified, those themes, but it's an introduction to the album. And it's funny because you read the lyrics and you're like, it's kind of amazing how Elton was able to put music to a lyric like that because of the way you kind of had to break up the phrases in a very weird way that don't sound normal when you're just reading through them.
Yeah, I will say, like, Bernie Taupin's is such a... He doesn't follow lyric writing in total song form. To me, he writes more like a poet, and he breaks rules the way you would in poetry. But when you're writing songs, you have at least in Nashville, you have some very specific rules on how you write, and Bernie doesn't do that. And then you take Elton John, and his melodies don't do that either. And to me, when they work together, it's a lot more of a theater kind of writing than it is a commercial pop writing, if that makes sense. And it's always been fascinating to me, and that's always the thing that like sticks out to me whenever I listen to Elton John, of, oh, that line just doesn't quite make sense there if I was writing in like the regular rules of songwriting. But if I was writing a poem, it totally makes sense. And I've always been fascinated because Elton was such an incredible instrumentalist
and melody writer.
Like, it works. They made it work beautifully. But I do think that's one of the things that has made them so unique. Mm-hmm. And the thing that made it successful was because it didn't follow the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Absolutely.
the lyrics didn't follow the rules, and the melody didn't follow the rules because the lyrics didn't line up in the perfect box always.
Oh yeah, and especially I think for me, just that first verse, especially the lines, Captain Fantastic, raised and regimented, hardly a hero, just someone his mother might know, very clearly a case for cornflakes and classics, 2 T's both with sugar please, in the back of an alley. It's like, what does that mean,
and the rhyme like trails off at the end, like, it's just funny. It's funny.
It trails off, at least in the context, I think, of the song itself, but then it is like there is the poeticism that makes sense on the just on paper.
Yep.
But yeah, and it starts off with this acoustic line, and you hear mandolin, and Elton's playing electric piano on this song. I think he's playing a Rhodes piano.
Yeah,
in fact,
he is.
And what I also love about throughout this whole record, especially on this album, is really, and we started to hear this a bit on Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, is some incredible percussion work by his percussionist Ray Cooper, who is very much a larger than life musician. We saw him play with Elton. He pretty much had an entire riser to himself with pretty much every percussion element you could think of, because he has a very distinctive tambourine sound when he plays.
I will say, when we saw Elton live, the band, oh my gosh.
Yeah, and they all played a majority of them played on this record. Nigel Olsson, Davy Johnson, and Ray Cooper were all on this record. They played on a lot of his hit records since the mid 70s or so.
If you ever want to know how rich an artist is, pay attention to the number of band members they have. And Elton brought out literally a fleet, and you're like, man, that's what it looks like when you've made it, when you can bring 25 people in your band without even breaking a sweat.
Yep, and if you're not a ska band either, but I digress. So there's like incredible percussion work on it, tambourine, viper slap, congas as well, because Ray just knew how to really add things that kind of sounded like hooks, but were very tasteful production, to the point where him and Elton in later years, they often did duo tours together, just them two, and they would just play songs together. But yeah, I love this song. It's a great opening track.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And then goes into the next tune, Tower of Babel, and I pronounce it Tower of Babel because that's how he pronounces it in the song.
Really? Not Babel?
In the Tower of Babel.
Oh, interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, I liked that song too. I thought that was a really great follow-up, to be honest.
What do we think that song is about? This is going to be what makes this episode fun, I think, more than any others, is really trying to
figure out what it means.
Yeah, figure out what some of these songs mean. Some of them are more obvious than others, but it's like, yeah, what are they saying? What is Bernie saying?
I just thought it was kind of the chaotic like when you're trying to be successful and you're trying to get to that next stage as an artist, you have so many things coming at you, so many different, like, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. Oh my God. Like, what if this fails? What if this succeeds? All these people are telling you what to do, and it feels like chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like, and to me, the Tower of Babel,
Mm-hmm.
that whole story in the Bible of everyone's just chatting your ear off
Yeah.
in all the different languages, like, that's how it feels trying to be a young artist and trying to be successful, is you just feel like you have all this constant chatter. So I think it's just that chaotic nature of trying to chase your dream. That's what I thought it was about.
Yeah, I think that's right on the money. It's really just about, the different talking heads and voices you hear that are trying to pull you in this different directions.
I would like to get out of my Tower of Babel season. I feel like I still have a lot of talking heads in my world.
Oh, well, I mean, whether that stops or not, you never know. But that's a constant thing that everyone has to go through, because you're trying to figure out what is the right place for you. You're not trying to exist in this, kind of city of everything.
Yeah.
Necessarily, there's a reason the Tower of Babel fell.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you gotta move past that season for sure.
Yep. Next couple tracks, Bitter Fingers and Tell Me When the Whistle Blows. These are very underrated tracks, I feel. Tower of Babel lyrically, probably, but Bitter Fingers and Tell Me When the Whistle Blows are also really strong songs. I mean, all the songs on here are very strong.
They are.
Yeah, what do we think of Bitter Fingers?
I mean, I understood it. I mean, I think
you're just paying your dues, basically.
You're paying your dues, and you're dealing with critics, and you're dealing with people who don't get you. And, I mean, why would you not want to write a track saying, telling those people off?
This is, funnily enough, I think this is also actually the song that alludes to how Bernie and Elton met. Because, and they actually do portray this in the Elton John biopic Rocket Man.
Yeah.
Because he's in the publishing office. I forget the name of the publisher at the time, and he's like, yeah, I write songs, and I don't really write lyrics that great, So the publishing house manager just picked something from at random. Just he had a stack of songs, a stack of lyrics, and just pulled one out just at random, and just being like, here, take this and see what you can do with it. Could have been anybody's lyrics. Yeah,
that's what's so wild about that story to me, is it's not like Elton like sifted through, because he had a stack of people from the way you've told me this story.
The publisher, yeah.
Yeah, it's not like he sifted through and was like, oh, I'm really drawn to this one. Like, he picked one by random, and that was Bernie Taupin's.
Yep, and incidentally, one of the songs that was in that stack was a song called Border Song, which ended up on the self-titled record. And I think Elton actually added the last verse to that song, because it was just a couple, 2 or 3 stanzas. But that was like the first. There was also another song I think it might have been called Dandelion or something like that, which I don't think that ever got recorded, or if it was just a demo or something. Dick James Music. That was the name of the publisher, Dick James Music, and that was the publishing house that Elton and Bernie wrote all their early songs through, for like the first couple years. This was before Elton had a record deal. I think Elton ended up recording his first album, Empty Sky, around that time. But that album was a total bomb, because it was still there was this weird trend in the late 60s where all these artists, especially British artists, were writing or recording records with harpsichord. That was very much a common trend. If you listen to the first Elton John record, that's kind of all over that. If you listen to early Cat Stevens, if you listen to James Taylor's first album that was recorded and released through Apple Records, and that was like really before people knew him as James Taylor. It's like there's a song called Something in the Way She Moves where it has a harpsichord intro.
I'm not a fan.
Which is a
total
on
record, not a fan of the harpsichord, everybody.
At least not in that way. It was it became very cheesy up to a certain point, But anyways, I digress. But yeah, Bitter Fingers was just kind of like, he was playing as a sideman for many years, especially with this British blues artist named Long John Baldry. He was his touring pianist, but also in those days, if you had rock and roll artists from America coming to tour Britain, a lot of times the local blues bands or the big name touring blues bands would back them up. Yeah. So Long John Baldry's band would back up people like Little Richard or Chuck Berry. So Elton got to kind of play with his idols around that time period. But just like anything, you do something for a while, it kind of becomes a dead end, and suddenly you want to get out. He wanted to do more songwriting, but he needed a lyricist for that. So Bernie, ended up becoming his lyricist, and and
I just love him so much. What I love about Elton, I've said this before about another artist on this podcast. I just really love the working musician who makes it. And I just feel like Elton is one of those, like, he was always going to do this. He was going to do this whether he was successful. He was going to do this whether he wasn't successful. He just put in the work.
Well, it doesn't mean he was gonna be happy about it all the time. And I point that out for the lyric. Of course, it's hard to write a song with bitter fingers. Yeah. So much to prove, so few to tell you why. Those old diehards in Denmark Street start laughing at the keyboard player's hollow, haunted eyes.
I should confess, I related to bitter fingers a little too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I listened to that. I was like,
bitter.
I was like, I get where we're at, Elton. I get it.
It seems to me a change is really, really needed. I'm sick of tra-la-las and la-di-das. No more long days hacking hunks of garbage. Bitter fingers never swung on swinging stars.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I mean, who hasn't chased a dream for too long and
well, and you're trying to go against the grain a little bit too. You're trying to do something. You're trying to do things differently, either for because you're not into what everyone else is doing, or you just naturally do things that are different. That was a very a very exclamation pointed sigh.
Yeah, that's how I feel today. That's how I feel today, Slice.
Should we move on to the next song?
I think so. Yeah. I think Bitter Fingers is too close to home. Okay, let's move on to one of my favorite songs on the record, which is Someone Saved My Life Tonight.
Oh, we didn't talk about Tell Me When the Whistle Blows.
I mean, okay, what's there to say? I want to get to the next one.
I mean, it's a little bit of a relief almost. Tell me when it's like, tell me when it's going to happen, just when are things going to work out.
Yeah.
So let's go on to then the hit from the album.
Yep.
And I say hit singular. This was the only single from this album.
Yeah. And I will say too, like, just because it's a hit doesn't mean I knew it was a hit. But listening to it, you're like, oh yeah, that song has something special to it.
Well, it's interesting because it's a long song.
Yeah.
It was a long song. It was a number one song.
Yeah. Although this is the one that uses the word sugar bear.
Sugar bear, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's odd.
So do you know what the song is about?
It is
like what it's literally about.
What I wrote was he leaving an engagement?
So he was about to be engaged or was engaged to a woman at the time.
Oh.
And because he hadn't come out yet.
Wow.
At all.
Okay.
And that was still very much, he was still very much in the closet with it. I mean, he had an on and off affair with his manager at the time, which they also portrayed in the film too. But this was a different situation, and one of his best friends was like, "Why are you doing this? You shouldn't be doing this. This isn't right." So he called off the engagement, and that's what the song is about.
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just listening to the song, it's about, kind of that, but I didn't know all the context.
Yeah, so the narrator's talking to the woman and just saying, like, this isn't going to work out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Elton has gone on record saying it's one of his favorite lyrics that Bernie had ever written, and I think it's mine too. It is one of those songs that's kind of a slow burn in a lot of ways, but there is something about it my favorite experience with the song is when we've seen him live, and when I've seen him live and he's done this song. There's incredible animation that uses the same characters and graphics from this album cover. And just it's very surreal, because the album color is very surreal. There's all these different, animals and humanoid animals and things like that. Just, it's this whole fantasy world. It's this whole fantasy world that they're kind of coming up in. They're kind of facing, all these creatures, and I don't know if they're trying to get out or if they're trying to, just move through this world. You see also here, these kind of bubbles look like musical notes almost with the other band members in there too. That's quite clever.
Yeah, I could look at this cover for like a year and not see everything.
Those are my favorite kind of album covers, the ones that have that double take kind of quality to them, where you look at them and then you look at them again and there's something new to discover. But yeah, Someone Saved My Life Tonight is also it's one of my favorite songs from the album. It's my favorite more than Captain Fantastic and Brown Dirt Cowboy, but there's another one we'll talk about later that's really it for me. But like I said, this was the hit from the album.
Yeah, I just love that idea of Someone Saved My Life Tonight. I mean, I don't know. The song just really stuck with me, of thinking like how down you would have had to have been to call that off. You can hear the love for the other person, as he's saying this isn't going to work, but also, yeah, and I didn't know the conflict with figuring out his sexuality at the time. I mean, that just adds a whole nother layer to that.
Well, I think he knew his sexuality. It was more of like, it was just not something he was able to reveal at the time.
Yeah.
We'll get a little bit more into that later on the record too. But yeah, this it's kind of interesting though that this song was kind of the only single from this album.
It's a different time though. That was normal to have like only one single, I feel.
Well, I mean, like Goodbye Yellow Brick Road had like 4 singles. And that was a double album. And that had a lot and basically the first side of Goodbye Yellow Brick Road was all hits. It was Funeral for a Friend, which wasn't a single, but that song has remained in his set list for, decades. He always plays it. We saw him do it. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, Candle in the Wind, Benny and the Jets, Goodbye Hill Brick Road. All these insane hits. And then later in that record, Saturday Night's Alright for Fighting. And then he's had like, I think the last album, Caribou, had Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me and The Bitch Is Back, A lot of his albums, most of his albums averaged at least 2 hits, let alone 2 number 1 hits. Very, very crazy. And granted, I will point out that there were a couple singles that came out around this time, the same time as this album, that were number 1 hits. The first one being his cover of the Beatles' Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. That was a number 1 hit.
Yeah.
And the other one being Philadelphia Freedom, which was credited to the Elton John band on the single. But that was a number 1 hit. That was kind of like the song that would have theoretically otherwise been on this album, but it didn't fit the narrative, because that song is about the Philadelphia Freedoms, which was the tennis team that Billie Jean King, I think, played on, because her and Elton were very close friends at that time.
Yeah.
But then again, he was just on a roll with a number of hits, and Philadelphia Freedom is actually probably my favorite of his more upbeat tunes, but worth mentioning in terms of the time period that this album takes place in, But yeah, Someone Saved My Life Tonight, it's a 6-minute song. It was very rare for a 6-minute song to be a number 1 hit. Hotel California hadn't happened yet, So
interesting.
But it is one of Bernie's most beautiful lyrics, and it's one of Elton's greatest melodies, and
yeah, I would agree with that. The melody is lovely,
and music that he had written overall for it too. And that's the one that always ends up on the compilations, Yeah. So then the next one, the probably the most upbeat song from this album.
I liked this one.
Gotta Get Me a Meal Ticket.
This was a personal favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say my 3 favorite songs were Captain Fantastic, Someone Saved My Life Tonight, and Meal Ticket.
Yeah.
I just loved the groove of Meal Ticket, and I just thought it was really fun. yeah, I just really loved that like kind of groove that was at the beginning, and it just sticks out from the rest of the tracks. It's at a really good place on the record, so it really a track placement on a record can make or break a song to me. When you're listening through it, it just felt like a breath of fresh air. I really liked it.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because it's kind of a song about being broke.
I mean, who can't relate to that?
You know? Was it shake a hand if you have to, trust in us, and we will love you anyway. Don't leave us stranded in the jungle with 50%. That's hard to handle. Ain't that so? Ain't that so? It's also about being ripped off by the music industry, too.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that.
If you're and if you ever if you've had a publishing deal of any sort, then you will have had those conversations. Let alone a record deal.
Yeah. This record it's too close.
Yeah,
it's too close.
Yeah, I like this song I just
like the vibe of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we get to Better Off Dead, which is probably the most cynical song on the album.
Elton John is cynical. That's another thing
Bernie,
I love.
Bernie is.
They're both cynical.
Well, Bernie can be.
They're cynical Brits.
Yeah.
as all Brits should be.
Yeah.
And it's something I love about them dearly. And we get that fully in this song.
Yeah, well, it's cynical in a tongue-in-cheek way, you know.
Yeah, it's very fun.
Yeah. This he actually did play this song sometimes when he had his it was the $1 Million Piano Show, because this was the song. This was actually a song that was quite regular in the set when he would do his shows with Ray Cooper. Because Ray Cooper would be playing, you know, the timpanis and everything too. So a very, very underrated song, and one that, you know, gets played out every now and then. Yeah, I quite like the song a bit too. Because the steam's in the broiler, the coal's in the fire. If you ask how I am, then I'll just say inspired. If the thorn of a rose is the thorn in your side, then you're better off dead if you haven't yet died.
And there you have it, folks.
That's right. All right. Thanks for listening. No, just kidding. And then the next song we have here, which is probably the one that gets least talked about, is Writing. Which
yeah, I mean, I get why.
I mean, it's
a nice song. It fits the theme really well. I bet
it's short. It's kind of short.
It's just short and sweet. There are songs that fit a record, but there's not a ton to say about that one, really.
Yeah, so one thing I wanted to mention, and I'll mention it here actually because I think it's worth noting, is that this is the only album that Elton John has ever performed in its entirety.
Interesting.
And he's only performed it in its entirety once, and that was at a headlining show he did at Wembley Stadium that he performed the entire album before it came out.
Interesting.
Headlining Wembley Stadium.
Huh.
Yeah, that's a power move right there.
Yeah, this is why I love this man. I mean, what a move. What a baller move.
Which you can actually listen to that concert on the 2-CD deluxe edition of Captain Fantastic, which is the first time I heard this album. I bought that deluxe edition. I think it was the 30th anniversary CD. And yeah, it was the only time he ever performed the entire album. And from what I understand, the audience were not very satisfied with...
Well, because they didn't know the song.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But here's the other funny part about it, is that in later years, Elton would also continue to perform this album every now and then, but he would never perform again Tower of Babel or Writing.
And why is that?
I am not entirely sure. Actually, here's what I will say about Captain Fantastic is that in some respects, it's a very hard album to perform. Because for some songs you need more musicians and pieces. Like there was actually a show he did, I believe it might have been during the Peachtree Road tour actually, that he just out of the blue was like, all right, we're going to do the album. And they did the title track. And it was very interesting because Davey Johnston, his guitar player, basically had to have a mandolin and an electric guitar on him at the same time. No, I take that back. He had to have an acoustic guitar, and he couldn't switch to electric, so he had to just, I think, run an electric sound through his acoustic guitar, which you're not really supposed to do that, but that was something. He had, I think, like a double neck ovation, actually, so he used the 12-string as sort of like a de facto mandolin kind of thing, if I'm remembering correctly. So, like, because there's a lot of change-ups in that song where there's like a mandolin going at the same time as an acoustic guitar, and he only had one guitar player in his band at the time, David Johnston, and then electric guitar rips in, So some of those songs get a bit tricky, but like I said, Writing was one of the songs that always got left off whenever he did play that album again in later years. He did every song except that one and Tower of Babel.
Interesting.
And I mean, it's like, oh, maybe he did it for time purposes. It's like, yeah, maybe so, but at the same time, it's quite interesting because, like you said, Writing's really not a song that you can really say a whole lot about.
Yeah, it's a nice song. It fits on the record.
There you go. But
Curtains, I mean, that's the final song.
No, well, even before that, the song that's my favorite song from this record, We All Fall in Love Sometimes.
Oh, I totally skipped that one.
Yep. So We All Fall in Love Sometimes, that's about Elton and Bernie. That is about their relationship. Because it was portrayed a little bit in the Rocket Man movie, is that when they did first meet, because Elton was very young, he did have a bout of infatuation for Bernie. But of course, they're as close as people can get, which is what the song is about. The song is basically about their relationship personally and as collaborators, and how certain people you meet along the way, and you get so close to them that you tell them you love them, and they say it back. That kind of dynamic. And I believe Elton has gone on record saying this is his favorite Bernie lyric of all time.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And
I love that.
And probably because it's the most personal to both of them.
It's sincere.
Absolutely. And I just want to say one of my favorite lines from that song: "The full moon's bright and starlight filled the evening. We wrote it and I played it. Something happened. It's so strange, this feeling. Naive notions that were childish, simple tunes that tried to hide it. But when it comes, we all fall in love sometimes." And of course, the last, I say the last verse, but it's really a reprise of the first verse. Wise men say it looks like rain today. It crackled on the speakers and trickled down the sleepy subway trains. For heavy eyes could hardly hold us, aching legs that often told us it's all worth it. We all fall in love sometimes. So it's like, no matter how bad things get, no matter how tired we feel, no matter what happens, is that we have each other. And this song immediately segues into Curtains. So every time Elton has played this song, it always goes into Curtains, which Curtains is it is the finale of the record, of course.
Yeah, Curtains was like a perfect ending song. Man, I love an album. I just love an album. I love creating like a collection of songs that are supposed to go together. We don't do that anymore. We create singles that go, and then we put them on albums. And when I listen to songs like this, or when I listen to albums like this, I just remember how much I love an album, because Curtains is a perfect closer. It's the perfect sentiment to end on.
And it's funny because it kind of ends at the beginning.
Yeah.
The lyric is about, there's a nostalgia in the lyric about, a time in the past where things were much simpler and maybe more brighter and enjoyable. You had you didn't think so hard about trying to make it or trying to find success or whatever. You just enjoyed where you were and enjoyed the beauty of it. So why is it called Curtains?
I mean, I just always picture the curtain closing at a theater.
That's how I pictured it as well. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, this whole record to me is about show business, and and you got Captain Fantastic, which this album cover feels like a musical happening, like, and so Curtains to me was just like, this is the final act, this is the final moment.
And part of that final moment is also the loss of innocence as well. You're kind of moving on from that, and now it's not that things are getting more serious, it's just that new experiences are arriving at this new stage. So we're now it's curtains closing, but it's also new curtains opening.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's an either or.
It's both.
Yeah.
It's both, depending how you want to look at it. Yeah, I think this is a perfect album, pretty much from start to finish. That's why I say this is his best album, because, say what you will about Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, not because it's a double album, but even in spite of that album can tend to have a bit of fluff on it. Like, all the songs are great, but you're not gonna. There's a good chance you're not gonna be in love with every song, or really retain your own attention to every song throughout that entire album. I can point to some songs from that album, but that's a conversation for another episode. Whereas with Captain Fantastic, it's just so tightly knit, and that's always been a struggle for some of Elton's mid-period albums or mid-70s records, and not all of his albums, but especially the one that came out before this, Caribou, which had hits on it, but that also kind of suffered a bit from having some filler or some forgettable filler. There's some great deep cuts on it, and Elton John, for an artist that really leans heavy on hits in his live show, he will occasionally, highlight a deep cut here and there in his live show, and just when talking about it, there's a reason this is the album he's always gone out of his way to perform in nearly its entirety throughout all the years, because he believes in the songs, I think, more than just whether or not they were hits.
Yeah. I love this record. I think this is a great record for your collection. If you're looking for, how can you have a collection without an Elton John record?
Right. Right.
Well, we always end with the same two questions.
Mm-hmm.
So are you ready?
Yes. What's the first question?
Why does this record matter to the culture?
This is the album that I think not only was the peak for Elton John's career, but I think is also the peak for 70s singer-songwriters,
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I think the first peak in that decade came with, like, Carole King's Tapestry.
Mm-hmm.
And along the way, you also had, you had your Billy Joels, you had your Neil Youngs and Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and other artists in between. Elton's kind of this interesting artist that fits in between sort of the soft rock of the 70s, but also kind of the AOR rock of that decade too. Not quite as heavy as like bands like Bad Company, but not as soft as band like Bread or America. He kind of did both, really, and so he was able to have success on all fronts, really. That's what he had, mass appeal. He gave him mass appeal. But that all culminates in this record, which has a great mixture of both of those sides. The best songwriting, the best melody writing, the best lyric writing. And there are other Elton's albums that you might enjoy more, but this is his best. I think objectively this album is his best.
And then the second question is, if no one has heard this record, why would you tell them to listen to it? Is that kind of the same? Is that why?
Well, I would tell them to listen to it because, especially if you're somebody that's only familiar with Elton's hits, then you owe it to yourself. If you're going to explore any album with really great deep cuts and following a narrative that really sees it through to the end, it's this album. This album, I think, is the peak of his artistry as a singer-songwriter. It's the peak of who Elton John was in the 70s. And you could learn something, I think, about yourself, or just about investing in that experience of what he and Bernie went through trying to make it as them, because we only, in a lot of instances, we only really see the success of what artists go through, but we never see the struggle, especially back in those days. But it's also like the coolest album cover too. It's one of the greatest album covers of all time. And, if not for Someone Save My Life Tonight, you're just gonna, that's worth it alone, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a great, behind the curtain record of what it takes to become one of the biggest superstars in the world. I mean, if you want to understand that psyche and understand that journey, that's worth listening to alone.
I agree.
Well, thanks everyone for tuning in to another episode of Home Records. If you like what you've been hearing, you can follow us everywhere you get your podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening today.
If you'd like to show your support, please give us a 5-star review and be sure to spread the word to all your friends, families,
and enemies.
So, thank you once again, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.